It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday morning, the kind where I could finally relax after an exhausting week of commanding officers, overseeing base logistics, and finalizing a joint training operation with NATO representatives. I was a decorated Air Force colonel, though I preferred to keep my rank quiet when I was off duty. My suburban home sat at the end of a peaceful cul-de-sac. At least, that's how it was supposed to be until a woman named Karen Whitmore moved in next door. From the very first week, she had made it her mission to police the entire neighborhood as if she were some self-appointed law enforcement officer. Her favorite hobby seemed to be calling the cops or HOA president over the most trivial things imaginable: untrimmed hedges, garbage bins left out for an hour too long, or even kids riding bicycles too close to her driveway. I had kept my distance, partly because my job had conditioned me to remain calm under pressure, and partly because engaging with a woman like her was a guaranteed way to ruin one's day. That morning, I was rearranging my garage and decided to park my black Ford F-250 across my own driveway temporarily. I needed to unload some heavy military equipment cases, training gear, not weapons, and the truck's position gave me the perfect angle. Within minutes, though, I saw Karen storming down her driveway, clutching her phone like it was a loaded weapon. She shouted across the street, "You can't park there. You're blocking the public space." I calmly replied, "Ma'am, this is my driveway." She scoffed and said, "Driveways belong to the community. You're obstructing traffic." There was no traffic. Ours was a dead-end street, but she didn't care. Within seconds, she was dialing 911, announcing dramatically that someone was illegally blocking a public access point. I sighed, trying to focus on unloading, but deep down, I knew this was going to escalate. The irony was that I'd spent decades diffusing international conflicts, and here I was, about to face off against a suburban dictator over a parking spot. As she paced back and forth, shouting updates to the operator, I kept my demeanor professional and unbothered. When you've commanded soldiers in hostile zones, no amount of Karen-level hostility can rattle your nerves. I caught the faint sound of sirens in the distance, and Karen looked smug, arms folded, as if she had just summoned divine justice. I remember thinking, this is going to be interesting. When the police car pulled up, the first thing I noticed was the officer's expression, a mix of confusion and mild irritation. He probably already knew what kind of call this was. Karen dashed toward the patrol car before the officer even had time to step out, frantically pointing toward my truck like she'd just uncovered a bank robbery. "That man is blocking the street and refusing to move his vehicle," she declared, voice trembling with self-righteous fury. The officer, a calm-looking man in his 40s, adjusted his sunglasses and asked, "Ma'am, is it your driveway he's blocking?" "No, but it's still against community rules," she snapped. He frowned slightly and walked over me. "Morning, sir. Everything all right?" I nodded and handed him my license and vehicle registration before he could even ask. "Just moving some equipment into my garage. Should be done in a few minutes." He glanced at my ID and paused, then did a subtle double take. "Colonel," he asked under his breath. I gave a small nod. "Yes, sir. Active duty." His posture immediately straightened as he handed my ID back respectfully. Karen noticed his demeanor shift and grew irritated. "What's taking so long? Aren't you going to ticket him?" she demanded. The officer turned toward her, his tone steady but firm. "Ma'am, this gentleman is parked in his own driveway. There's no violation here." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "That can't be right. I know the HOA rules. You can't block driveways, it's against safety codes." The officer sighed. "Those rules apply to public streets or obstructing others' access. He's on his private property." "Private property?" she repeated, as if the concept were foreign. "You mean he can just do that?" "Yes, ma'am," the officer replied curtly. She turned to me, eyes blazing. "Who do you think you are?" she hissed. I gave her a small, polite smile. "Just a neighbor, trying to move a few boxes." I could have revealed my rank right then, but I didn't need to. She was already fuming. The officer looked at me once more and said quietly, "Sorry about this, Colonel. Happens more often than you'd think." I simply shrugged. "No harm done, officer." He nodded and left, much to Karen's horror. She stood frozen, watching the patrol car drive away, her mouth slightly open. "Did he just let you go?" she stammered. "Yes," I said calmly, "because I didn't do anything wrong." She stormed off without another word, but I could see the fury in her eyes. Something told me she wasn't done. And I was right. Over the next few weeks, Karen escalated her campaign against me. It began with petty complaints to the HOA, false claims that I was running a military operation out of my home, that loud drills were disturbing the peace, and even that my American flag was too large for neighborhood standards. The HOA president, a sensible man named Greg, dismissed most of her reports, but I could tell he was getting tired of her constant calls. Karen, however, wasn't satisfied. One afternoon, I returned home to find a note taped to my garage door. "You've been reported to the city for illegal vehicle storage. Remove all military items immediately." That was the final straw. I decided it was time to stop letting her control the narrative. That night, I invited a few local veterans over for a small barbecue in my backyard. We shared stories, laughed, and raised our glasses to years of service. Halfway through, I noticed Karen peeking from her window, phone in hand again. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled up again. This time, she told them we were arming ourselves and disturbing the neighborhood with aggressive behavior. When the officers arrived, one of them recognized me instantly. He'd served under my command years ago. "Colonel Dawson," he said, saluting instinctively. I smiled. "Sergeant Mills, good to see you." Karen's jaw dropped. You know him?" she stuttered. Mills nodded proudly. "Yes, ma'am. The colonel here trained half the local force. He's one of the reasons this city's emergency response system even exists." Karen looked mortified as realization set in. She'd spent weeks harassing someone who not only served his country, but had directly contributed to her community's safety. The other officer stepped forward and said sternly, "Ma'am, false reports are a serious offense. This is your 3rd one in a month." She mumbled an incoherent excuse and retreated back inside her house. The moment the patrol cars left, laughter erupted from my backyard. "You handled that like a true commander," one of my friends said, raising his glass. "That's just another kind of battlefield," I replied. But inside, I was already planning my next move, not out of revenge, but to teach her a lasting lesson about respect. The following weekend, I received an invitation to the annual Community Appreciation Day, an event where local leaders and first responders were recognized for their service. The mayor himself would be attending, along with representatives from the police and fire departments. I was scheduled to receive a commendation for my years of service and ongoing community support programs for veterans. As I arrived in my dress uniform, I noticed Karen standing among the crowd near the refreshment table. She was wearing her usual expression of superiority until she saw me walk onto the stage. The mayor took the podium and began listing my accomplishments: 2 decades of active service, command of international operations, leadership in disaster relief programs, and the establishment of a local veterans outreach network. When he handed me the medal and said, "Please welcome Colonel Michael Dawson, one of our finest," the entire crowd stood and applauded. Karen's face turned pale. Her jaw slackened as she realized the man she had antagonized over a driveway was a decorated officer being honored by city officials. After the ceremony, she hesitantly approached me, voice barely above a whisper. "Colonel, I didn't know," she stammered. I gave her a measured look. "You didn't need to know my title to treat me with respect," I said evenly. She nodded, shame washing over her face. "You're right. I'm sorry." I extended my hand, not out of pride, but out of principle. "Apology accepted. Let's move forward, neighbor." For the first time, her expression softened. In the weeks that followed, Karen changed noticeably. She stopped policing the street, stopped filing frivolous complaints, and even began greeting people kindly. One evening, I saw her helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, something she'd never done before. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe she'd genuinely learned humility. Either way, peace had finally returned to our cul-de-sac. As for me, I never bragged about that day or told anyone how it started. I'd faced down insurgents, led missions across continents, and navigated diplomatic chaos. But it was the battle for my own driveway that reminded me of one simple truth. Authority means nothing without integrity, and respect is earned not through rank, but through character.